Welcome back, everyone, to Coach to You. I'm your host, Coach Regina, and I am back with another video. Today's topic, we're going to discuss the bridge of emotions. We're going to delve in how the concept of our emotions are not just about feelings, but essentially they're more about how we react and respond to situations and how they serve as powerful tools in being able to determine how it shapes our perception of reality and the things that we're experiencing in our day-to-day life. I want you guys to stay with me to the end of this video. This video will prove helpful to be able to determine how your emotional state is actually shaping your reality and can ultimately help you determine why you may be experiencing certain things in your life in a cyclic way. Okay. So let me go ahead and give my disclaimer. Although I'm a student of psychology, I am not a licensed healthcare professional. All information and content on my channel stems from my own personal experience and extensive research on the topic. If you feel like you have a mental health condition, consult a licensed healthcare physician. All right, let's go ahead and get started, you guys. Okay. So, again, today's topic is the bridge of emotions. Okay. We're going to dive into a few like little points, and then I'll kind of give you a little bit of synopsis surrounding those points, and then kind of tie it in together within my own personal sphere of influence. Okay, so emotions, again, emotions act as a bridge. They shape our perception and our emotional state, and they act as a lens into terms of how we view the world. When we are happy, our perception is more likely to be positive. Conversely, when we're angry, anxious, or fearful, we may interpret like neutral situations more hostile or threatening, especially if we're living in survival mode as well. By influencing how we see and interpret reality, emotions directly alter the facts of our experience. So that's one particular point I want to touch on. Now let's give a little bit of understanding surrounding that particular statement. Emotions shape our perception. When we talk about, loving emotions that we can experience based off of our choice, um, when we experience emotions like love, joy, happiness, elation, different things like that, pride, these emotions kind of color the lens in a way that makes the situation appear more balanced, if you will, versus emotions such as anger, aggression, hostility, rage, sadness, disappointment, things like that. They color the lens of our experience from a different perspective. Understandably, red, orange, these colors like this here. When you're seeing through, if you ever think about it, when you approach a stoplight, that stoplight initially starts to, if you're slowing down, that means that you're cautioning, and until it ultimately gets to red, which means stop. Okay, the back of a car, the same thing. You see the car, and it begins to tap on its brake. You know that you're supposed to instantly come to some type of halt. Well, we were not conditioned like that in that regard, where we take a moment to breathe, process our situation, and recognize the red as a moment to take just a pause, if you will, or come to some type of stop. Even if it's an abrupt stop, it gives us the ability to be able to process our situations from a different perspective rather than just going off the radar, because we're seeing through the lens of red. Now, what does red symbolize? Fire, right? Orange, things like that, right? uh Blood. You see blood, you think about it in that, from that perspective. These are essentially the colors that are filtering how we see reality, but we were never taught that. So if we grew up in abusive homes where we suffered with depression, anxiety, abandonment issues, different things like that, then we have these particular certain, emotions stored on our cells, on our body. Okay, and essentially they begin to fuel our behavior, or they, because they become coded in that regard, and how we perceive it at that moment is the message that has sent to ourselves in that particular moment. Okay, secondly, emotions guide focus and attention. Intense emotions cause us to focus more acutely on emotionally charged stimuli. As I mentioned, you look at red, you instantly know to stop. You're right. But fear, for instance, focuses attention on potential threats as a survival mechanism, as I mentioned earlier. When we're looking at how we are going about our life and we have these desires and things that we want to live in terms of how our parents may have lived, then we have to look at it from how they grew up and what experiences they face versus how we are experiencing life today. Okay, a lot of our behaviors are conditioned behaviors. So if our emotions are guiding us and essentially geared where our attention goes, then you have to understand it from this perspective. If you're living in survival mode every moment of the day, that means that you're constantly in hyper arousal, fear, and stress based states of being. Based off of the law that governs our existence, it has to give back to you what you are predominantly putting out there. It, regardless of how the creator wants to bless us and give us all these beautiful things, our emotional state is basically co-creating with the divine to give us back those things on a cyclic uh system until we actually deal with them. Okay, now I know this could be, it's a lot of jargon here, but if you can focus on your life and think about it from the perspective of, pay attention to times when your life where you were happy, where you felt joyful and excited and things like that, and you went out into the world, for the day, you got dressed and you went out and everything, and it seems like everything just seemed to go your way. Now let's take that from a contrasting perspective. When you went out angry because you stubbed your toe that morning, or because you burnt your toast, or because you woke up and your car was gone and you knew you had to go to work at a certain time, so you're running late, and nothing seemed to be happening, and then all of a sudden everything seemed to go downhill from that moment. What I was mentioning earlier is the emotions that are shaping the perception of the initial event from the start of the day. When we learn how to reframe our situation, now I want you to understand, no two people are going to deal with their circumstances the same. I'm telling you how to learn how to reframe your situation from the perspective of where it works to your advantage. I learned how to do this and it changed everything. I used to struggle with anxiety, fear, and depression because of the abuse that I suffered as a child. So I didn't know, for the longest time in my life, I was living in survival mode. Okay. I never knew what it meant to breathe, calm down, and look at situations from a more calming perspective. Everything was a threat and everyone was the enemy. It wasn't until I started doing the emotional work, healing through meditation and different things like that, that I learned that something was happening. When I started trying to reframe my circumstance, not trying, I actually made a conscious choice that, you know what, I'm done living in fear. I'm done being scared of what's going to happen. If bills are not going to get paid, if you're going to lose your house or your car, whatever the case may be, I said, I'm done. Enough is enough. I realized that I did not like the way the emotions were making me feel and what it was creating in my life on a daily basis. So what I did was I started reframing. When the anxiety would arise within me and I would be in my time of meditation and feel fearful or whatever because of whatever events were occurring through the day, I started to do something, guys. I took my hand and I put it on my chest and I actually reframed the emotion to emotion of compassion. So where I would feel anxious or fearful, I started to say, I am so grateful that this compassion and love I feel in my heart is changing everything for me. Things are naturally working out for me because I feel this compassion. And I noticed that I started to feel more calmer. So I continuously did it. And then when the anxiety would kick in, I started reframing it. I said, I am so thankful and grateful that this joy that I feel inside is because I am on the verge of experiencing something great. And lo and behold, things would happen throughout the day that I was just like, oh, wow. Me reframing those experiences has been the catalyst for changing my experiences throughout the day. And so it worked. Okay. So let's go back for a minute. Okay. So we talked about emotions shape your perception, emotions guide focus and attention. And now let's talk about number three, how emotions fuel your behavior. Emotions are a powerful motivational force that drives our actions. Feelings of passion and joy can lead to inspired action toward a goal, while negative emotions like frustration can either spur change or cause you to retreat. By consciously cultivating positive, empowering feelings, we can actually activate the motivation needed to achieve our goals. This is the most powerful one for me. I mean, I'm going to give you two more, but this one really was the cornerstone, because when I started reframing the experiences that I was having, or the emotions per se, I noticed that my behavior changed. Where I felt like this strong need to try to control and force an outcome, I started getting wisdom and insight on how to utilize my gift to research and to navigate those complexities. And I started finding answers to things that I didn't know exist. This right here really started kind of making me feel like, okay, something is really, really happening here. I came across a video, you guys. It's by a gentleman. He does some type of channeling, and he said something where someone asks, they during their prayers they pray and they say, God, give me help. God, give me help. And he said in his response through channeling was that we don't need any more help. We need to be made like, aware of the help that's already available to us. Now, this is where it really got, understandably for me, shocking, because that's what was happening. I became aware of the help that was already available to me that I couldn't see before because I was living in survival mode through anger, fear, and stress. It was coloring the lens of the higher states of consciousness, which were love, joy, peace, compassion, where you can be able to have accessibility to the help that's already there. That was a game changer for me. So I'm a person that I'm very big on research. I really look into things. And so I started to kind of look into this thing for a little bit deeper. And when I looked at it, the analogy it was given was heaven and hell. For our lifespan, we were taught that if you do all these bad things, you're going to go to hell. And if you do all these good things, you're going to go to heaven. From the aspect of recognizing what I just mentioned earlier, the higher states of consciousness, the awareness that came to me is that those lower states of anger, stress, worry, fear, anxiety, that is your hell. And the higher states of love, joy, peace, and compassion and excitement, that is your heaven. Yeah. And if that analogy is accurate, then the Bible tells you that the kingdom of heaven is within you. So everything that you need that pertains to life and godliness is already within you. It just has to be realized. Yeah. Yeah, pretty exciting stuff, right? Because it changed everything for me. I mean, I became so aware of opportunities that were initially I thought didn't exist. I felt like things were just going downhill and there was topsy turvy and all of that. And it started just by me making a conscious choice to reframe my emotional state. Everything is perception. We are co-creating our reality with the divine. And so basically, even though you have your free will, you can choose. Yeah, you can get off this podcast and hear my message and say, I'm going to continue in this anger, this fear, this stress, this worry. Or you can say, you know what? Coach Regina may be on to something here. I'm going to make a conscious choice to choose love, joy, excitement, compassion, gratitude, right? And see how my life changes. Make sure you leave a comment and let me know as well, because I know it worked. Okay. All right. So the last two are emotions influence memory and belief. Now I mentioned earlier how the emotions are coded on the cells in your DNA, right? Well, let's talk about how emotionally significant events are in fact coded. Yes, it says that they're coded more vividly in long-term memory. Okay, these memories and their associated emotional weight form the core beliefs that define our inner world. I'll say that again. These emotions or these memories and their associated emotional weight form the core beliefs that define our inner world. If you went through abuse, abandonment, and rejection in your life, and that had an emotional weight coded in your long-term memory, then anytime you experience abandonment, rejection, betrayal in your normal everyday life, because these things are coded with a emotional resonance there, they automatically come up and bring those feelings back around as though they're happening already again. Now, according to your nervous system doesn't know if we're in fight or flight or survival mode again, because to it, it's happening right now rather than it happening the 20, 30 years ago from when it initially was coded in long term memory. These core beliefs, they act as the foundation for your expectations, influencing your behaviors, and the reality of your experience. This is why it's hard for people to manifest their desires, because if they grew up with beliefs that they were not worthy, that they have no values, that they were not able to accomplish anything, this is what's the underlying cycle that's running in your background subconsciously that's blocking you from co-creating your reality. Because the only thing that, if you're saying I am worthy, your affirmations, they work. I've been doing them for over 20 years. I've been manifesting for over 20 years. If I've always done it, but I never knew what I was doing. I just started studying psychology, and I understood reticular activating system, right? The RAS. I started to understand the saliency and things like that, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what's happening within our brain. We are co-creating our reality through the emotions, which act as fuel to fuel the desire, right? Your thoughts is what's basically continuously causing it to show up in the ether or the akashic records, if you will. This is what's happening, but we're not learning it from that perspective. So when you feel hopeless and you feel fearful and you feel these moments of abandonment and rejection, then you start to feel like you're not worthy of these things. And here's the deal, it's a lie. You're worthy of everything that you desire, everything that you've ever wanted. You can have it. You can. It's you just have to know your values, because it has to be attached to your values and your sense of self worth to be able to be on this earth, to exist. And you can't harm others. But essentially, you can have a good life, right? You can rewrite your story from abuse, trauma, and abandonment to the life that you truly desire, right? Not that which is bound by fear, stress, worry, and anxiety. Come on now, right? That should be good stuff, right? I'm not pulling this out of a hat, guys. I've tried it and it works. Lastly, so we talked about emotions influence memory and belief. These long-term held beliefs, they act as a grid, and they're locked in. I can't change the way you think in 20 seconds. And I sure can't change it in 20 minutes of a video. And I cannot change it in 20 hours. But if you give someone enough understanding and they can repetitiously do it for 20 days, you can literally create new neural pathways in the brain through what's called neuroplasticity. And you can rewire the brain with new programs that says, I am worthy. Money comes to me. I am a magnet. I attract opportunities with ease. I am naturally abundant. Abundance is my birthright. I am so happy, thankful, and grateful now. I am blessed with opportunity that support my highest good. Everything is always working out well for me. Guess what? It's not just the affirmations. That's why people say that affirmations fail, because it's your emotions that are fueling that particular statement, right? And as through repetition, the 20 days or so, you can build new pathways that say, guess what? I do feel worthy. I do feel valuable. And after time, the subconscious mind will begin to pick up those programs and say, this is our new identity. We are no longer that person. And it'll stop running the self-sabotaging, defeating programs that are hindering your life. Okay, we're gonna tie this thing up, guys. Let me know if you want part two, because I know this is good, because I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Okay. Emotions can create a feedback loop. This is another thing. When you sit and spiral and go into emotions of fear, anger, rage, uncertainty, and different things like that, they create over time, they begin to create a feedback loop. This is how people can become suicidal, a manic, or depressive, because if you're sitting with those thoughts over a period of time, 16 seconds, you can then begin, the brain will pick it up and it'll begin to spiral on its own. Okay. Your inner emotional state is constantly shaping your outer reality, which in turn reinforces your inner feelings. And this is what's creating the feedback loop. When you have these emotions of people ain't right, people are going to mess over you, or people always owe you, or whatever the thoughts you may have, once you begin to feel those emotions that are associated with that, those emotions then in turn create a feedback loop, and it signals um, certain things in your like your brain, so where you start to behave in a certain way. So it's thoughts, feelings, behavior. And then you begin and you why did I do that? It's because the emotions that you were feeling that initially started with the thought that you begin to think. Okay? For example, if you believe you're unworthy, as I stated, an inner emotional state, you may act in ways that attract negative experiences, which then confirms your belief of being unworthy. I'm just going to give you the real deal, guys. Nobody's doing anything to us. We're not victims. Yes, people have their actions and they have their own free will to act in ways that are congruent with their own emotional state. But essentially, our initial response or reactivity to it determines how that situation will begin to attach to another similar feeling that we experience in past times of our life. In return, sit and dwell on it, which will create a feedback loop. Will in turn make it reoccurrent, and these situations continue to become a cycle pattern in our life. You can break the cycle. Shifting your inner state can therefore initiate a new feedback loop that leads to more positive experiences. I'm telling you, I did it. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to continue to go through this process and begin to reframe those emotions to give yourself something that feels more, more. They feel better, guys. If I told myself, you know what, I don't care if anything changes. I know one thing: I don't feel the way I used to feel anymore. If it's all hogposh and placebo, if you will, guess what? I feel better. I'm thankful for my life. I have so much more gratitude in my heart. And I wanted to give this back to you guys because it has changed something for me over the last 6, 7 months of my life. And I realize what I want. And I also have come to accept what I don't want. I am co creating my life with the divine. And you have the ability to do the same. Balancing our emotions with rationale. Understanding that these subtle feelings that you feel, they're not facts, okay? They're just thoughts. They're just simple, and you have the ability to reframe it and change the way that it's making you feel on the inside. Again, I want to make sure that we get this thing out there where, if you guys want to hear part two, I'm going to come back in and I'll jump into part two of the bridge of emotions and how our emotions are essentially shaping our reality. Guys, my name is Coach Regina. I want to thank you guys for listening and staying to the end. Be sure to check out my other videos, like and subscribe. Take care.